Good morning. My name is Greg Davis, and I'm with CBS ArcSafe. I would like to welcome you to our April webinar dealing with remote racking and remote switching for a cross-section of SquareD products. Now, SquareD actually started out as a motor control center manufacturer. We've done stuff for SquareD Model 3, Model 4. We're going to show you one item. And they moved up to Model 5 and Model 6. They got into the bolted pressure switch by working with a company called Barkley out of Ohio and bought that up. When they got into air circuit breakers, they first had a license from Westinghouse, and you'd actually see sometimes a DS with their name on it, or you might see a K-line breaker with their name on it because they licensed that from ITE also. So they were working their way until they became part of Schneider Electric, and then you saw the Master Pack. We're going to look at a cross-section of those. We don't have any molded case circuit breaker products we're going to show you today from either the I-line or the Power Pack series, but know that the RSA 57 and RSA 164 series, we've done a lot of those applications, and if you've got something you got a question for those, please don't be afraid to contact us. So we're going to start out first with our DSR1 for the RS3 system. Now, normally the thing I'd tell everybody is make sure you look at what your arc flash hazard boundary is and be outside of that when you're going to do any of this type of stuff for real on live equipment. So we're going to turn the system on. We already have the system mounted on here. Well, when I take it off, I'll show you how it actually engages. We have to push down our enable button. The breaker is in the connected position right now, so I'm going to hold down the out button. And it releases the torque at the end of the process. Now, you'll notice that this DS breaker actually has a SquareD logo on it. The DS breaker was originally designed by Westinghouse in 1967 and introduced to the market. It became commercially available in 1969. So I don't know how far from 1969 on SquareD had a license to make them, but you will find these that say SquareD on it versus Westinghouse or Eaton Cutler Hammer, and it was a licensed breaker made by them. So we're going to now rack the breaker back in. We'll hold down our enable button and press down the in button. Yeah, so the live video, there's actually a small camera that's on the left-hand side of this that's watching the position indicator on the breaker. Now, one of the things I need to note about position indicators on the DS breakers is there's not a line, and I'll show it when I take this thing off, and I've seen this before, so I'll explain something about it. So we've completed the racking process, and now we have to hold down the tab underneath here to get the racking tool out. So this tongue goes in and it engages in the system. Now, one of the things I would instruct you about the DS breakers is this, okay? When you're looking at this, before you go to rack a DS breaker in the cubicle, you see that we've got a definite line here for test, we've got a definite line for disconnect. This is a metal tab that can be bent. And so you might want to make a line just so you know where that connect really lines up on that breaker. I had that happen when I was doing some training one time down at a steel mill in Laplace, Louisiana. We'd taken a DS breaker out of a box, and just out of curiosity, I racked it in, made a mark on there with a permanent marker where it showed the connect. And so when we racked it back out and we threw it in the cubicle, but I'd made that mark when the employees were outside of the substation, just for my own note. And when we racked the breaker in using one of our remote racking systems, it's not in all the way, because the mark wasn't up at connect, but it was like down here. And so they're like going, hey, it's not in all the way. I said, it is. You see that black mark on there? Yeah. I said, I put that black mark on there when it was sitting on the top of the crate. And they're like, really? And they open up another cubicle. Yeah, it's in all the way. So this is not necessarily uniformly going to show up at the same place, and you need to understand that, and you need to look at how this breaker is positioned in the cubicle to make sure when you've completed the racking operation, you've completed it and you know what it looks like. So just understand that's a small gotcha that you can run into on a DS breaker. Okay, now we're going to show our RSK DS10, and it only closes and trips the breaker. It doesn't matter whether it's an electrically operated DS or a manually operated DS. You would have to charge it with your hand or use the charging motor to do that, and then use the DS10. So before I can put this DS10 on here, I'm going to charge the breaker manually, one stroke down for a manual breaker, okay? And the way that this mounts, just so everybody sees, it's got a couple of little magnets on the bottom here. This mounts by sitting on the handle. So you start out by putting it down here on the handle like this, and then letting it come forward onto the face, and it needs to sit flat on the face. If it's not sitting flat on the face, you've got to reset a little plunger that's on the back side before you can operate this. So just understand that's one of the things you got to watch out for when you're doing this. Okay? Next, we're going to take and hook up the wire. So there's a, I don't know if you can see it that close here, Brian, but there's a little arrow on the front here, and that indicates where the guide is as far as to line things up, to connect things, to make everything work right. We're going to hold down our enable button like this. We'll move it to close and to trip. And that does the close trip operation for the DS series breakers. That doesn't matter whether it's a DS206 or an 840. It'll do all those series of breakers, okay? Now, if you have to do charge, close, and trip, we're not showing this device today, but we have the RSA12B with an RSO3D that can do the complete operations, whether you have a manually operated breaker or an electrically operated breaker. All right. The next thing we're going to start playing with are some fused panels here. So I'm going to do the off operation here. This is an early model QMB. It looks like a similar handle to what was the Model 3 motor control centers, but they're the fused panel switch handles. Okay, and then we'll do the later series, and that's an RSA 123 versus the RSA 134 series here. And you'll be able to see the difference in the style handles. So SquareD left them all labeled QMB. Okay, so we've got our RSO1 installed. We've got this mounted on the panel. Let me move this out of the way, and we're going to turn the RSO1 on. So we got 26 volts right here. AR is off. and we want to trip it, so we're just going to hold down the trip button for the duration of the cycle. Turn off the RSO, and I want to show everybody what the handle looks like here underneath so you can see. So those come in a couple different sizes. This is just the one that's made for the 400 amp. So understand that we need to know the amp frame size of the fuse that you're going to work on, and pictures always help. If you got questions, call us at 1-877-472-3389, or you can send us an email at info@cbsarcsafe.com. This is the newer style of QMB switches, and this is the RSA123 series, and we're going to do this one now. Again, we'll turn our RSO on, and since we're in the off position, we're going to hold it down for the close. And the trip. We see a lot of the QMB switches in data centers and other types of facilities, so you know, this is what the newer QMB looks like compared to the old one. Let me just take this off here for a second so everybody can see. So they come in, this is a 200 amp, and you've got bigger ones, and it's just a slightly different model of the RSA that people would use for that. So we make the different RSAs in the 123 series. Next, we're moving to a SquareD Model 4. Now, just to explain, one size does not do all in the SquareD Model 4. This is a size 1 through 4 bucket. There is a size 5 bucket with a slightly larger handle. So understand that you may have both. We need pictures to verify what you have for the proper application. We've done other things, so like you can have, SquareD uses the same style handle on a lot of their flange handle safety switches, and we've done several of those. So you can send us the model of your heavy duty safety switches and other things, and we can work to get you taken care of on those also. Okay, we've currently got the MCC closed, so we're going to trip it first. And we're going to close it. Okay. Now, one of the other products I'm going to talk about just briefly for a second that you're not going to see today, but can be important, is the RS2 bucket extractor. So even though we're not showing the bucket extractor today, lots of facilities need these, especially if you've got like a 5 kV transformer that feeds just an MCC without having a 480 main breaker upstream of it to protect it. So you may have an entire room that has exceedingly high over category 4 arc flash hazard boundaries. Okay? And the first time I ran into that was about 11 years ago down in a refinery in Louisiana. And they would have had to shut down to do one MCC bucket change on a SquareD or a GE or anybody else's thing because of the way the place was wired. So even though we don't have it today, I just want to put a pitch out there that if you have something like that, please give us a call. The next thing we're going to look at is SquareD Model 6. Now, one of the things to note about SquareD Model 6 is this. This is the SDL 6 standard. There's actually another one which is for the newer version. So SquareD initially used the I-line circuit breakers in their MCC buckets for SquareD Model 6. When they put the power pack breakers in there, this handle got smaller by 3/4 of an inch. Okay, and so we actually have 2 RSKs and RSAs for this type of application, and we need to know how big your handles are to make sure whether you need one or both of those RSKs. Because as you can see, the RSK locates around this to be able to resist the torque moving up and down and everything else. So that's one of the important things about a SquareD Model 6 that you need to know when we get ready to do this stuff. All right, so we've got our SDL6 here. We're going to wake it up. We're going to hold down our button right here, and we're going to hold down the off button. Release it, hold down the on button, and then we can put this thing to sleep. So this simply attaches with a couple of magnets right here. And you can see that it's made to locate around that handle, and that handle size is important for the location. So that's the reason we need to know whether you got one or both sizes. Okay. Our next item is going to be the RS3 for the SquareD VR circuit breakers. As I said, SquareD started out as a motor control center company. They bought up a company in California called Haoyin. Then they made the VAD1, the VAD2, the VAD3, and then the VR circuit breakers. So here we are with the current generation, the VR. And that's set up. We've got it in the connected position. All right, so let me make it so you can see the RSO4. And we're going to turn this so you can watch stuff here. We're going to turn on our radio remote. It tells us, yeah, we've got 4.5 and 3.0. We're in the connected position, so all we need to do is temporarily touch our remove button. And I want to say it's about 24 turns on the screw to get this thing on and off the bus. And now we're done. So we're going to hit our stop button, hit our on button, and now we're going to go do it again, except this time we're going to install. Just temporarily depress it, get it started.
You may want to talk about the clutch on the front as well as the CCM for safety.
The CCM, the current control module, is monitoring the torque. Now, we use different numbers for an RS3 based on the gearbox on the motor than we would for an RS1. Okay, but we have those torques, we've determined them. We go through using a torque wrench on the system to figure out for like a 1200, 2000, 3000 amp breaker how much torque is required, so we know not to try and put in any more torque than just a couple foot-pounds over what's required to get the breaker on and off the bus. So let me take the system off here and I'll show you what Ben was mentioning just off camera here for a second. We use what's called a Perfotorque on here, okay? And we actually have a couple different clutch assemblies, but this is an adjusted clutch that we set between 2 to 5 foot-pounds above the torque that we know the breaker should take to get on and off the bus. If for some reason it's clicking when you first start to rack something in and the system shuts off, it's trying to tell you there's an interference inside of the cubicle. So don't try and force something. The system's trying to tell you something's wrong inside the cubicle. So just understand that that's something that can happen. And I've actually had customers give me bad breakers and bad cubicles, and then I've identified the fact that they have a mechanical issue inside of the cubicle, and they admit that they thought something was wrong. So remote racking does not fix any known deficiencies in your switchgear, but it may help you identify the fact that you need maintenance, and understand that. Now, the next thing we're going to show is the NW20. And this is going to close and trip the NW breaker. Now the thing about the Master Pack series of breakers, the original one was made by a company called Merlin-Geron in France, which then merged to become part of Schneider Electric. And when SquareD became part of Schneider Electric, they took the NW, or correction, they took the MP version and made the NW, and now the current generation is MTZ. The nice thing about the NW20 is it will work on the MP, the NW, and the MTZ larger frame breakers. And what I say by that is this. The NW, all their frames will work. The NT, which is a small frame breaker, it's a different remote switching kit, remote RSA, okay? It's a different one because it's a different face shape and stuff. So when I say large frame, I'm talking something that has this size face. And so we're specific about geometry here, okay? Now, a standard 30 or 50-foot cable is what comes with this. If you need something longer based on arc flash hazard boundary, you need to let us know. For demonstration purposes today, we're going to use like a 5-foot cable. So this is going to locate in where the handle goes. Then you got your closed trip buttons right here, and that's how this sets up to operate. Right there. Okay, let me grab my little on-off device here. Again, this has a little arrow on it to help you line up the front with the slot. Get it lined up and engaged. Now you have to turn it on right here. Once you got that on, you're going to get a yellow light. Okay, we would step outside of the arc flash hazard boundary, push down our enable switch, and we're going to go on. Once you hear the breaker turn on, you release the button. And the same with the off. Okay? And that's the operation and the setup of the NW20. Again, it works on all of the Master Pack MPs, NWs, and MTZ breakers with the same size face. All right. Now, as I said, SquareD started out as a motor control center manufacturer. In 1967, they bought a company called Barkley. And so all of the stuff from about 1967 that they had for bolted pressure switches and basically big old knife-based switches that were low voltage came from Barkley. So you may see something like this or one of their other, things that are similar to a Pringle switch for voltage pressure switches. And you may see the same picture and it says, well, mine says Barkley on it. Do you guys have something for that? Send us the picture. We'll know whether or not we've already done that one because they had it, they made them originally before SquareD came along. So this one is for the large one. This system right here only does the close and the trip for it. Line that up. All right, so one of the funny things is when we introduce new people to sales, whether it's a man or a woman, we normally wouldn't have our cheater bar on here for this, okay? This takes over 200 foot-pounds of force to charge the spring. And so we bring our new employees out here to have them gain a perspective of what you in the field have to deal with when you're doing this. We've seen cheater bars in locations to help people be able to get this done because if you got some 150-pound person, they're not going to be able to charge and close this spring. So they have to put a cheater bar on the end of these to be able to do this. Okay? So we're going to turn this on, and because we've already got the spring charged, all we got to do is press the close button now. And to trip. And that's what it takes to do that operation. So we have evaluated doing a charge close trip system for this. It's one of those things that people say, well, we can charge the spring, so we just never built the charging system for this series of the bolt lock switch yet.
That would be Series 1. We do have a charge close trip system for Series 2.
Okay, so we do, from what I hear, this is a Series 1 switch, and we've done the close and trip for it, and for the Series 2, we've done the charge, close, and trip. So if you got questions, send us your pictures to info@cbsarcsafe.com, or you can call us at 1-877-472-3389. Now the next one, this is the HVL switch, and one of the things to understand about this is they have a power zone switch that looks like it. They have bottom fed switches and other things that'll look similar. We need to know the model to know the proper orientation. So the bottom fed switches, we have to reverse the wiring in the RSA, and it's only for those switches. It's not for the HVL switches. Okay, we've also done the HVLCC, which is the new one, which is not this switch either. So just make sure you tell us the proper model number for the switch so you can get the right quote for the right product. You'll notice that we have replaced the two-piece, I think, factory assembly handle with our own handle for this, for the RSA. And this particular switch can come in a right or a left, and it can have Kurt keys and all sorts of other stuff. So we understand that, and we've got to where we can do all those different variations of it. So again, I'm going to turn our RS01 on. We're currently in the closed position, so we're going to just hold it down for the trip. And now we're going to hold it down for the close. Okay, I'd like to open it up for questions now and understand that, you know, we've just shown you a cross-section of what we've done for SquareD. We've done stuff for the I-line panels and for the power pack molded case circuit breakers located in load centers. So if you got questions about those, don't be afraid to ask also.
Greg, there's a question about a molded case circuit breaker. We don't have one to demonstrate right now, but if you could kind of talk about the I-line or the power pack.
Okay, so what happens with a molded case circuit breaker is mounting is important. So sometimes these things are recessed, sometimes they're flushed. We have videos online already for some of the products, so you can look at those up at our YouTube channel. If you have specific questions about a particular model, we can send you a copy of the RSA manual for those also. So you'll notice usually on SquareD breakers, they'll have a raised face on the older I-lines, and we would work to locate around that so that we have a fixed position where the remote switch actuator is going to turn the molded case circuit breaker on and off. And we've done similar stuff for all the power pack. You know, you may have a R-frame power pack that's recess mounted. We see those in data centers. We've done things for those also. So again, you're going to need to send us your pictures so we can pull out the specific one, because I think with the RSA 164 series, just as I mentioned, the variations that we've seen, we've got, understand, we go RSA 164 is the first one. I think we're all the way down to, is it K?
For the 57 series?
No, 164.
It's higher than that. I think we're closer
And
to R or S.
R or S. So we've got all the way through the alphabet to S on different mountings, things with Kurt keys, things with lockout, tagout stuff on it. So we've done a lot of applications for those things. You need to show us what you got so we can help you out with the specific thing. And we've done stuff for like the Cutler Hammer R frame, the big one there. For the GE, whether it's the older GE TK series or the newer Spectra series. So we've done stuff for the Eaton. We've done stuff for GE. We've done stuff for ITE Siemens. So again, we've done a lot of stuff for molded case circuit breakers around the world. So if you can send us some pictures, and when I say pictures, we want to see a picture of the panel board something's mounted in, so we can see the area around the breaker. so we know where we can attach magnets, how much space you've got, whether something's recess mounted or whether it's a flush mounted system, so we know which one of the applications to pick out or know if we need to help you with developing a slight variation on something we've already done. Again, if you've got questions, please send us an email at info@cbsarcsafe.com or call us at 1-877-472-3389. Thank you.